Yo, what's good, my people? Now, ever tried to style something and it's just not working? You're there thinking, why is this div still blue when I told it to be red? Trust me, I've been there. Bare frustrating. Now, today we're talking about CSS conflicts. What happens when styles clash and how to win those battles. This is the knowledge that separates the rookies from the pros. Now, you see that C in CSS? It stands for cascading. And understanding that cascade is going to save you hours of debugging and hair pulling when your styles aren't doing what you want. Now let's get into it. All right, CSS stands for cascading style sheets, and that first word is very important. Let me show you what happens when rules fight each other. Now I've got this heading right here, H1, and it's inside a div with a class of source order example. Now in the styles, there's actually two places where this is being styled. So we got it here with the color of red and here with the color of blue. Now what color wins? Now the blue one does because it's the last one in the file, but that's just one way conflicts get sorted. When different selectors target the same element, the browser has to decide which styles to apply. Now there are three main powers that control these decisions. The first is cascade, where your styles come from and the order that they're in. Specificity, how precise your selectors are. And inheritance, how styles pass from parent to child. Now let's have a look at this other example. So we've got this H1 with a class of main heading. And we can see it's here in the page. Now, if we look at the styles, or in the CSS, now we can see that the heading is red. Now, even though it is being targeted in two separate ways. One with the class of specificity example and H1, and the other one with another class of main heading. Now, even though this rule comes later than this, the text ends up red because the class selector main heading is more specific than the element selector of H1. And that's specificity winning over source order. All right, let's go through inheritance. Now, inheritance is like passing down the family traits. When you set some styles on a parent element, certain properties get passed down to the children automatically. Now, let's have a look at here. So we've got this parent element with a class of parent and the child element with a class of child. Now, if we look at the CSS for this, we can see that the parent element is being styled with the color blue with the border. Padding, font family, margin bottom, and background. Now, we can see that within the child styling, we actually haven't set the font color or the font family. However, it gets inherited from the parent to the child because of inheritance. A quick tip is if you hover over the specific class, you can see the selector specificity just right there. So I've got it here in the comments. You can see it's 111. So one ID, one class, and one element. And we can see that we've got that here. It's the class of specificity demo, the ID of outer, and an element, which is an anchor tag. And I've got these other examples as well here. So it's 211 because it's got two IDs. So it's almost like 211. So these are 100, 100. 1 for the class, or 10 for the class, and 1 for the element. I've got it here in the browser as well, so you can see that. Now, with this link text here, let's just let's find where it says link text. Yep. We see it says blue background, white text. So the link text ends up with the blue background because of the second rule's higher ID. So because it's got two ID as opposed to one ID, it's got more specificity, and so it kind of beats this background color. So it actually shows blue instead of red. Now IDs are super powerful. They outweigh any number of classes. So a single ID beats 1,000 classes. Now importance is the third factor. Now, the important flag just overrides normal specificity rules. So here, even though the specificity, that's a difficult word to say, is lower, but because we've got the important, it just wins. It overrules everything. So you can see here that, so this text is red, despite the ID selector trying to make it blue. Now, I'll say real talk, using important is like bringing a gun to a fist fight. It works, but it breaks the normal rules and makes future styles harder to manage. I'll say use it as a last resort. Now, the final factor in resolving conflicts is where the CSS comes from. Styles can come from several places. So I've written it all down here in the HTML. So the first is browser's default styles, which is the weakest. Now, the second is users' custom styles. So this is for accessibility and stuff like that. Now, the third is your CSS files. So what we write as developers. And then lastly is inline styles. You're also using the style attribute within the HTML. So if you were to write style and you could put, let's say, display equals block or something like that. Now that gets applied the last. So I'll say when styles conflict, they're applied in that order. So first the browser, then the user's custom styles, CSS files, and inline styles, with the later ones overriding earlier ones. That means our CSS files override the default styles, but then inline styles override the CSS files. Now there is one exception, which is the important. So this important sort of that you put in the CSS that I've shown you. Now this flips the order for user styles, letting them override developer styles. So you can see this new order, which is the browser default styles, user normal styles, developer normal styles, developer important styles, user important styles, and then lastly, the browser important styles, which is the strongest of them all. Now, this is good for accessibility. So users with specific special needs can force their styles even if the developer used important. Now, all of this helps understand why sometimes styles behave unexpectedly. They might be coming from browser defaults or user styles that you can't see in your code. Now, I'll say with debugging CSS conflicts, I'll say the browser dev tools is definitely your friend. So by being able to select elements, you could check the styles, you could actually see what is computed. So you can see the padding, the margin, the border, and actually what is being rendered on the page. Now you could check, which styles are being overridden. So if you have something like here, I could put a display none. You can see that box just left, or it isn't being shown. So using the dev tools, you're able to see what style is actually being applied, and you could actually see the other styles that may have been overridden. All right, fam, let's wrap this up. Now, when CSS styles beef with each other, the Cascade sorts it out using source order, specificity, and importance. Now, specificity is your scoring system. IDs beat classes, classes beat elements. Inheritance passes certain styles down to children, letting you write less code. And source order means later styles can override earlier ones with equal power. Now, if you haven't watched the box model video, go check this one out. It's the other half of the CSS foundations that you need. Now, these two concepts, box model and the Cascade, are like the building blocks of your CSS knowledge. Once you get this, you'll stop asking, why isn't this working? And start telling CSS exactly what you want it to do. No more random styling behavior. You'll be the one in control. Now, next week, we're diving into CSS Values and Units, where we'll show you all the different ways to size and measure things in CSS. So we're talking percentages, pixels, rems, ems, all that good stuff. Now, if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep coding, keep creating, and stay blessed. Safe.